Recording.
Okay.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nyemade, and I have a fellowship with NAMI for Diversity and Equity. We are here tonight for Sharing Hope Community Conversations. It is our monthly conversation where we get together and we just talk about different things that's happening in the world and within our community, especially within the BIPOC community, Black, Indigenous, people of color, and just to create a safe space for us to have conversations, learn more, and feel connected. I'm so excited. It's the first one of 2022. And so tonight we're going to be talking about pivoting, because I know that is a topic I think many of us have had to deal with, especially with COVID happening. It felt like it was going away and then it came back with a vengeance, and now people are changing direction again. So I have two great guests with me tonight. I have Chantel Coleman. Chantel, would you like to tell everybody a little bit about yourself?
Sure. So my name is Chantel Bratcher-Coleman. I am the CEO of Shaping Minds Therapeutic Services. We are a private practice that is located in Newark, Delaware on Main Street near University of Delaware. And we are a minority-owned and based therapeutic service centered. We do counseling, and we're starting to get into some other things in the community to do community awareness and trainings and things of that nature. But we service everyone. It's just that our staff is all minority. And I brought a guest on here with me tonight because I've been feeling under the weather. So she has been lifting me up in spirit and in memory. So Chantel Bratcher-Coleman is going to introduce herself, and she is now my new second in charge. So I have some help at Shaping Minds because we are growing and expanding, and 2022 is going to be a great year. So Chantel.
Hi, I'm Shay, or Chantel. I am, as Chantel said, her COO for Shaping Minds. Previously, I worked for the government of DC. I am from Delaware. I worked in Delaware for nonprofit agencies such as Soda Delaware, Brandywine Counseling, and me and Chantel worked together at Pathways of Delaware in alternative school placement. So I feel like I have a good amount of knowledge to join you guys this evening and on the topics and give some feedback. So I'm looking forward to it.
Thank you. I'm so glad to have both of you. And as I mentioned, this is Community Conversations. It's just a casual conversation. We have guests because sometimes it's good to have just some specialists to give us tools and tips that we need to overcome certain areas. But for the most part, anyone who's joining, and thank you all for joining us today, you're welcome to join in the conversation as well. So as I mentioned, the topic tonight is pivoting. I think it's something that we all have to do, but it can sometimes be incredibly difficult. I know I'm a planner. I'm like, oh, here's my 5-year plan. Here's my 10-year plan. When COVID first happened, it hit me really rough because I was like, wait, that wasn't part of the plan.
That wasn't a plan, right?
Right.
Yeah. So I had to really just stop and pause and sort of change direction. But the hardest thing for me at first was sort of dealing with the disappointment. Because when it first started, I had things like lined up because I do social media correspondent where I talk at events or I record events for different businesses. And I had to have all of those canceled because everything shut down. And just dealing with like the disappointment of the initial shock was very hard for me. Chantel, how do you advise clients, or do you call the people who visit you patients? The patients?
No, so I don't call them patients because for me that sounds more like they're in the hospital.
Yeah.
I do call them clients.
Okay.
But the reality is, as much as we want to prepare, like there's so many things that are unknown that you have to be prepared for if things are going to be out of your hands. Mm-hmm. And sometimes, we look at that when our plans change, we look at that like it's a negative thing, but hindsight is 2020. We can kind of see like, you know what, I was supposed to go through that thing, or that was supposed to happen in order for me to do this next thing. And sometimes that doesn't look as pretty as we want it to look. So, so the reality is, in life, you can prepare as much as you want, but we're not always in control. And the only thing that we do have control over is our emotions and what direction we decide to take when things go for a different turn than what we thought it would be.
Mhm.
So,
Absolutely.
yeah.
I know, continue. I didn't mean to cut you off.
No, what did you, Chanel, what do you think?
Oh, no, I said, I definitely agree. Change is almost inevitable, right? And a lot of times we find ourselves struggling. We're not able to pivot because we're inflexible. But one thing about being able to pivot it is you're able to adjust to things that come your way. The more you resist, you find that life becomes harder and you create a lot more stress for yourself. One of my coworkers had mentioned one time, he said, life really isn't hard. He said, I'm telling you, life isn't hard. We just make it complicated. He said, if we take the situations as they come and then just allow things to kind of unfold without any pressure or trying to control it, you'd be surprised how easy life can be. That's the ability to accept the pivot.
Absolutely. Now, Chanel, how does somebody deal with letting life just come as is? I think part of it, I know for me, I'll be honest, I'm a little bit of a control freak. I don't know if you could tell that, but so sometimes it's hard to be like, oh, I'm just gonna sit back and let life happen, which you have to, because it's going to happen either way. But what's some advice that you give to people to try to, I guess, release the reins a little bit?
My favorite thing that I tell people is one thing that you hear practiced a lot within the mental health, addiction population, which is the serenity prayer. The most important thing about being able to accept the pivot is accepting the things you cannot control and having courage to change the things that you can. If you focus on those things, you'll find that it's easy to pivot, right? You can't control nobody else. And I think Chantel just said that. You can't control any circumstances. You can only control you in a way you respond. So that's the best way to kind of handle those situations when they come your way.
Great. Chantel, what is a good way to try to find sort of the balance between planning? Because you don't want to just not plan. I think for me, especially as I was going into more so last year, more so for me from 20 to 21 than 21 to 22. But I went from being this person who would make like New Year's plans and my resolution to being like, what's the point? There's no purpose. Like, I'll just let life happen, but not in a good way. Not in that way that we just talked about.
You need a happy medium.
Yeah, it was not the happy medium. It was like, So like, what is a good way to sort of advice to sort of find that balance where you are still planning, but you're still leaving that room, that wiggle room?
I think sometimes because I'm like you, everything has to kind of be in its place. It has to be lined up, or I start to get a little bit nervous. But what I notice is that when I'm planning so much that I feel overwhelmed, like I might physically start to get a headache, or my chest hurts, or my back hurts, but something in me is changing. I think when you get to that point where it's like, I just need to breathe, then then you've gone too far. Like at that point, it's like, you know what, you've done enough planning. Kind of let's leave it where it is. Let's kind of see how things happen, and in that seeing how things happen, being willing to adjust, because like you said, New Year's Eve plans. Like sometimes we have our whole outfit, and it's like I'm going to this place, and I've been planning this for 3 months, and then COVID hits, and it's like, oh, well, that venue is shut down. Well, okay, so now I can't do that, but what can I do? I think sometimes we shut down completely. It's like, if I can't do this the way I thought I wanted to do it, then I'm not doing it at all. And that's not the case. It might just need to look different. And so I think that we need to be okay with this could possibly look different, but I can just still have just as much fun. I might have to party in my living room and do a Zoom call, right? And we might have to party on a Zoom call, but we can still have fun in this moment because we're still together, just not in the way that we thought we would be.
Absolutely. Now something, we're referencing COVID a lot because that's really hit us right now, but even when we're younger, I think that sometimes things happen out of your control, or life happens a little bit differently than what you thought it would. And I know for me, like the teen years were rough as it was. So when something happened that would really sort of throw things off and make me have to deal with that disappointment, it was extra hard for me. So I have two questions with this. One, as an adult, if you find teens, like let's say they had their dreams to go to a certain college and they're not able to anymore, like that was a moment for me, you know, and they're dealing with, you know, I guess the loss of a dream. That's really what it feels like, right? When your plans get canceled, it feels like you've lost that little bit of a dream that you held on to for whatever reason. As an adult, how can we approach, you know, younger people in a way where we're supporting them, but not being dismissive? So I do find sometimes adults can be a little bit dismissive when things get canceled for younger people, like, oh, it's fine, you still have so much life to live. So how can we support them?
Shay, you wanna take?
I think that, yes, definitely. I think that that's a great actual question. I think that the way we can go, and I actually work with young people that deal with a lot of disappointment on the regular. So I think the best way to kind of support our youth in doing things such as that is, to remind them that the sky is the limit, right? Think and dream big. There's nothing too big that you can't do, you know? And I even tell my daughter that, I'm like, you know, don't pick one thing, you know, who's stopping you? You don't have to just be one thing. It doesn't have to go one way. You don't have to just have one friend. Who said you can't have three best friends? You know, there is no rule to this. You know, don't box yourself in, you know, don't think small, dream big. You can be anything. You are not a result, a product of the environment. You are who you determine you want to be, you know. And so I think just kind of giving them that positive motivation, that support, those resources, you know, actually exposing them to something different, you know, when you see that they've been let down, being that consistent individual in their life to let them know that all has not been lost. There are good people around. Some of the youth I work with, they'll say, Miss Shay, why are you being so nice to me? And I say, I'm just showing you what love really is. You know, you only can understand what love is or how to feel based off of what you've experienced and been taught, you know. So when they find a person that motivates them, that supports them, that's consistent, that encourages them to dream and never give up, that provides resources, you know, you're not just talking about it, but you're about it. That's how you help them to overcome those fears and those obstacles that tend to come or present in their way and create those challenges that could possibly set them back.
Yeah. Yes, I love that. Chantel?
And I think some of us come from a different generation, right? Me and Shay always laugh because I'm a little bit more mature than Shay in age, right?
Don't make me laugh.
I'm a little closer to 40, but you know, I come from a generation where, you know, the elders in my generation, it was, you know, you really don't tell all your business. You know, you really, like, they weren't as transparent with us as we probably are with our kids. But I think with this generation, what I see, this younger generation is like, you can't really hold back from them. Like if you hold back from them your truth and what your story is, they look at you like you're not authentic. So, you know, sometimes like the older generations would like pick and choose what they wanted to give you, like little tidbits. Like this generation is like an all-in generation. It's like, if you're going to tell me what not to do, then tell me what you did, exactly how you did it and what the result was. And then I'll think about, you know, using that as my example to do something a certain kind of way. And I think that we have to kind of get away from that fear of, you know, if I tell them my whole story, something bad is going to happen or they're going to look at me different. Because my thing is, regardless of what your story is, it's your story. It's not changing. Regardless of what you did in your past, it's still part of your story, and nobody can judge you or change your past or take anything from you that's meant for you. And so that being the case, I think that we have to start to be a lot more open with ourselves and with our children so that they can learn from our mistakes. Like that was the thing, our parents wanted us to learn from their mistakes, but you're not really telling me how did you make the mistake? Like I know you fell, but like did you trip on something? Were you unsturdy? Like what made you fall? And we're we have to give them all of the information so that can help them grow. And I think if we continue to do that with them at a very young age, I think that these kids will be a lot more successful, accepting that some things are just not within their control.
Yeah, those are really great points. I think that it's great to talk about providing people and helping them understand like the grace that you have to give yourself and situations with changes. But there's also, I think, like that resiliency that's needed to deal with changes as well, because you do have to have a little bit of a tougher skin to sort of power through those moments. What are some tips from either of you that you would give people to help them just, I don't want to say man up. Normally I'd be like to man up, but
yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like, what are some tips that you would give them to help them have that resiliency to deal with those situations?
That's so funny that you asked that, because I was on a call yesterday and I was a little taken aback by the position that the person that made this comment was in. And, I have brought up the whole thing about, quality mental health services and supports in schools. And his response was, well, sometimes people just got to go through what they go through and they just got to deal with it. And I'm like, I get that, because the reality is you're going to go through what you go through and you just have to deal with it. But sometimes when you have the proper supports in place, the proper people in place, you're in the right environment. I can go through whatever I go through, but I know that I'm going to be okay. There's some people that are going to go through what they go through and they have nobody and they're not okay. And so you have to allow people to go through the mud, but you still got to kind of be there with them to be like, okay, if you get stuck, I'm going to help pull you out. Or if you start to sway a little bit, like I got you. Like we all need to know that somebody has us. Like even if that somebody is whatever your higher power is or whatever you believe in, even if that's what has you, like nobody needs to go through the storm and not know that somebody is going to pull me out if this gets to be a little bit too rough. And and I don't think that that's okay to just be like, you know what, you'll be fine. Just get up and shake that off. Like, wait a minute, I wasn't shaking before I fell, and now you want me to get up and shake it off? Like, I don't know how to do this.
Yeah.
And I think that we all have to be a lot kinder to each other, and we got to be a lot kinder to ourselves.
Absolutely.
Definitely, I agree. And with Chantel leaving off on being kinder to herself, I believe that's really important. That awareness piece, developing your protective factors, boundary setting, right? That's kind of what you say, like man up. Sometimes we have to develop the protective factors in those skills, because a lot of times when we find ourselves, when we continue to be let down, we continue to be hurt, or we're in these cycles of trauma, a lot of times we haven't learned the effective coping skills to say, no, I can't do it, or it's too much, or you hurt me when you did that. Being okay with speaking up, having a voice, seeking appropriate resources that can support you, because a lot of people still believe that treatment or, peer support or whatever, all of that is taboo. We think that we can just, this isn't nothing, I might not feel great, but other people have it bad or they have it worse than me. No, don't minimize what you're experiencing, Get someone that can support you through these things and learn the appropriate boundaries and protective factors so that you don't continue to get exposed to those cycles, and be okay with identifying sometimes it might even be me, it might be me. And that's really hard for a lot of us to do, we don't really want to look at ourselves, we don't really like that self-reflection period. And sometimes it hurts, right? It's a wound, and it's easier to go into that defense mechanism and blame everyone or, look at other people. But getting that support, getting someone that you can trust, that can give you that insight, those resources, that is really valuable, and that helps you to man up and get through those tough times because you become more self-aware. You learn yourself, and that's the thing that we struggle with doing, but you can do it with the support.
Right.
Absolutely. And I love that you both touched on that, how much support is needed. And sometimes you do have to get help. And, Chantel, you even mentioned, someone saying that you just got to deal with it. And I think we have a lot of that out in the community, whether it's because of age differences, one generation to another generation, or just because of cultural differences. I mean, the Black community really just started talking more about mental health care. It's still fairly new to us. We're still very much, most people seek out religion and church first, which there's absolutely nothing wrong with that. And we've had conversations on here about that. But seeking help is important, especially seeking help from someone who knows what they're talking about and who has experience with it. Because you can vent to your friend, but do you know that your friend has the capacity to take on your drama, your issues, as well as what they're dealing with? And then B, can your friend really help you, give you the tools to overcome? They can listen, they can say that's sad, but do they have the tools to help you overcome?
Right.
But sometimes the
What are their
hardest thing.
intentions? Sometimes you don't know other people's intentions, so sometimes that makes it hard too.
Absolutely.
Definitely.
And sometimes the hardest part is taking the steps to say, I need help, to tell your spouse or to tell your parents, especially if you know that there's someone who doesn't typically believe in getting therapy or things like that. So what is some advice you can give to someone if they're feeling like, oh man, I need to reach out, I need more support, but I don't know how to tell this other person in my life because I know that they think it's hogwash? What's some advice you would give them?
Well, what Shay just told me when we were talking before we got on is sometimes you can't tell everybody everything. But, what I've realized is most of the time when people, they'll say, well, how do I know I need therapy? I'm like, when you start to ask, do I need therapy? Anytime you start to have that question, do I need to talk to somebody? Or am I going through something? When you get to that point, that's the time to start searching. Because if you get with a good therapist, if you don't need them, they're going to give you some referrals. They're going to give you some guidance, and they're going to say, you know what? You don't need me right now. Come back to me if this thing gets worse. But so it's, you can always ask questions. And now with social media, do I need to do yoga, or do I need to take walks, or listen to music? It might not be that therapy is always going to be the answer, but when you start to question in your head, should I, is it time to, then that's the time to at least reach out to somebody that can give you some good insight.
Absolutely.
I totally agree with what Chantel just said. Being okay with saying, hey, I want what's best for me, right? And sometimes we can't, like Chantel said, you don't know everyone's intentions. You can't always expect that your family is gonna, give you that feedback based off of, what they believe is, it's gonna be based off what they feel is most successful or best for you, or your friend, what they believe is best for you, or what would help you from their insight. But finding out a person who's unbiased, non-judgmental, you can get that feedback. You can talk to somebody. Think about it like vegetables when we were kids and our parents said, just try it. Then we found out we love collard greens, right?
Right.
Give it a try. You never can go wrong with just giving it a try. There's so many things, like Chantel said, TikTok videos. We got Clubhouse videos and podcasts all day that focus on these things. And you have therapists. Even Chantel and I was doing a forum last year, and we'll do it again to kind of help adults navigate their life on a regular, because you have people who are unsure, is therapy for me? You can kind of get a feel just by kind of seeking support groups. They have so many different chat groups. They have apps like Meetup, where, you know, based off of things you're experiencing, you can join people with like minds that can help you to kind of navigate or see what your needs are. And sometimes it takes you from coming from amongst, you know, the people that you've been exposed to, the people that you're used to, and getting out, networking, and meeting somebody new, or meeting other people, or people with different careers, different backgrounds, to get that feedback, to see, you know, have I been stuck in these same patterns all my life and I just didn't know, you know, because I'm becoming a product of my environment. Stick yourself out. Sometimes it even takes us to move from our own state or our own city.
Try something new.
That's the pivot. Yet again, you know, the change is good, you know, so if it feels like, oh, I'm a little nervous, I'm giving it, that's great. That's what life is about. Try taking a risk for once, right?
And I love the points that you made, because it actually transitions perfectly into what my next question was going to be. Because we've been talking a lot about the pivot coming at you, right? Like, you're not having control and it just coming at you and how you deal with it. But sometimes you make the choice to pivot. You decide you want to change direction. You decide you want a course change. And a lot of the things, Chanel, that you mentioned, I think are great ways to do that. But that was going to be my next question. Like, if someone has decided, like, I want to change something about my life or something about the way that I do things, like, what's a good way to sort of tackle that?
I think for some people are going to need a safety net. You know, some people, if you're a planner, and you're like, I can't just, like, some people can just get up and move, right? Like, I've seen people where it's like, I don't want to be in Delaware anymore. I'm just going to look, I'm going to search, I'm going to go, you know, get me an apartment or a house in this city, and I'm just going to go. And you're like, wait a minute, like, you're just going to go? Because I'm like, I got to secure the job. I got to make sure, I need to kind of teeter on, like, I'm going to keep my job here and I'm going to keep that job there. And I just got to make sure that I got one foot on each side to make sure I'm sturdy. And it, you know, but that's stressful. So sometimes, you know, you got to put some safety nets in place and be like, you know what, I'm going to take this chance on me.
Yeah.
But if it doesn't work out, this is my backup plan. And sometimes you got to go completely out of what's comfortable for you. Sometimes you get that little voice in your head, not the voices in our head like something's wrong, but the voice in your head that's like, you got this. And just be like, you know what, I'm gonna take this chance and I'm gonna step out on faith and I'm just gonna do this thing. And sometimes it might not work out, but it doesn't mean that there's not a lesson in it if it doesn't work out. There might be a lesson for you to learn from it not working out. And then you might get it right. You know, there's been several jobs that I've had before I went into business for myself. And it was like, wait, but I'm doing this and I'm doing all the right things. And it's like, nope, we don't want you here. And then I'm like, okay, you know what? I go to the next job and I'm doing this and I'm doing the right things. Nah, we don't want you here either. And I'm like, well, what am I doing wrong? And you have to realize sometimes it's not you that's doing something wrong. It's just you're not in the right environment for you. And you have to go through the pain and the uncomfortability to finally get to a place where it's like, you know, like for me, I own my own business. I am so comfortable in owning my own business. If it failed tomorrow, I would be like, so what? I had it for 3 years and 2 days and 20 hours, you know, like I would still be excited. And see, that's where you have to be. You have to be to the point where it's like, I took a chance on me and it did work out or it didn't work out, but that was something that I wouldn't usually do. And I did it. And then you move on to the next thing and make a new plan.
You're speaking to me right now, because I'm a I'm a safety net person, but I've been on that verge too, especially with career stuff, because I do like, I've been in corporate for so long. It's hard to give up that corporate safety net, even if you know that you're undervalued. It's good money, but even if you know that, you know, like you're undervalued and that you could do things that make you happier, it's still like, but that 401k and benefits, though, like, I don't know if I believe that.
It's not worth your mental health though. Because my thing is, you know, that's a conversation that Shay and I have been having, you know, for quite some time. And I get it. You know what I mean? Because when you talk about 401k and you talk about retirement plan, you know, I'm completely honest with Shay. When I wanted to bring her on, I said, I don't have that. I said, but there's nothing inside of me that is telling me that I won't get it. I know I'm going to get it. And my mental health, like, if I have that corporate job and I'm making that $100,000 and I have my 401k, but I can't get up in the morning, well,
dreading every Monday.
They're not
Every
going to
Monday.
let me keep calling out. Or when I get to the job and I pull up to the driveway and I'm sitting in the car and I got to put on my gospel music just to step foot out of the car, not even into the building. Like, I feel like I'm having a heart attack every time I walk through the hallways or I see
Yes.
and it's taking everything in me to be the nice person to say, hi, good morning, how are you? And they don't even speak. Like,
right. At one point.
Like you're punishing yourself.
Yes.
And my thing is, when you feel that greatness inside of you, which I know you have, okay, I know you have sunshine. When you feel that greatness inside of you, sometimes you have to believe it. And I think that's the hardest thing about, minority populations is we were always kind of taught to not believe that we were great. And we were taught that, to not take that chance and just do what's safe and do what we're told. And it's in us for generations and generations and generations to just go along and do what we're told. But the people that are telling us to do things don't have our best interests. And I think that that's what we have to realize, that we have our own best interests. And you got to take a chance on you, and you got to step out on faith. And sometimes you'll fall, and sometimes you just start floating. And you got to be okay with it.
That's right. I totally agree. And, this really honestly has been something that me and Chantel have been talking about for a while now. And actually very similar to you, that was one of my struggles. I'm like, I just don't know if I can leave government and come into, actual like entrepreneurship and not have as much stability. And one thing, Chantel, we're like sisters, and she said to me, you can either do it willingly or, sometimes it'll force you. You'll be forced to do it. And I was like, oh, goodbye. I didn't want to hear that at the moment. And no, that was actually very accurate. When you're trying to force, your own life path, you'll know you're not going the right way because things won't work out for you. You won't attain the level of success that you want to see. You'll notice that your finances seem to always be caught up or bound to something. You're not flourishing. You can pray, and you can do whatever you do for your higher power, and you still aren't completely happy. You still find that you're not fulfilled, like you're just missing something. There's a piece of you missing. It's usually because you're trying to control or go against what is really meant for you. When you accept, where you're supposed to be in life, like Chantel said, it is, you don't have to worry about walking up the hall and flipping this person a bird or saying, I'm shutting my office door. I'm not doing life. Like I said, it doesn't have to be hard, and when we start finding that it's hard, it's complicated, it's costing us our mental sanity and things, we have to kind of look at, like, obviously it's time to change. So that was one of the most valuable pieces of information. And it's okay. You might not like it when someone, like when Chantel said it to me, it's like, I didn't really want to hear that at the moment, but I didn't doubt like that she was saying it because I know her. And I'm like, she's saying that with my best interest at heart. And literally a few months later, I'm like, yes, this is what she meant about it will force you out of these situations. So, sometimes, we think we know or have our best interest. I'm like, oh, Chantel, no. But no, really, she was saying it. She knew that she had my best interest at heart. And sometimes we get so caught up in planning, organizing, and all these different things. But sometimes it does take another person to kind of be like, well, maybe you should give something else a try because this hasn't worked for you, okay? And you have to receive that, you receive it. And that's
some of those people will try to break you, and that's the thing about being, when you're working for somebody else, when you start to feel like someone is just really not valuing you as a person, like makes you feel like less than a person. Some people are out here to try to break you. And sometimes your spirit is so strong and so lovely. And so, it's like, I'm just floating like a little butterfly. I'm just having a good time. And then it's like somebody's like, well, why is that person always happy?
Yes.
Well, what is it about them that makes them happy all the time? No, they need to be miserable like me. And they might not even realize that they're doing it. But you got to realize that when you have those people around you that it feels like you're constantly trying to break me, sometimes that's not just a test. That means I need to get out of this environment because this environment is not healthy for me.
Mhm.
It's time for me to go.
And I saw a quote recently that says, like, sometimes you don't fit into certain environments because they're not meant for you. Like, the reason why that space is uncomfortable for you. And I'm religious, so I apologize if anyone isn't, but it's because God doesn't want you to get comfortable in that spot. That's why he made it uncomfortable for you, so you continue to grow and change.
But we'll stick and stay. See, that's the thing about minorities. We will stick and stay, especially if you're telling me you're gonna give me benefits and you're telling me that you're gonna give me a 401k and you're gonna pay me $80,000 and you're gonna give me 7 days of vacation, which I probably won't even take because I'll sleep the 7 days because I'm so darn tired.
And burned out.
And you're gonna give me that $50 gift card at Christmas time and tell me you appreciate me. But then at the same time, you're gonna beat me down in the team meeting.
Yeah.
Well, I think that's the problem with. I think that's part of the problem with, being a minority is that we, unfortunately, are so used to the struggle, right? Like we're practically raised thinking that the struggle is just how life should be. Like it just is. Even on like the not extreme side, on the like lesser side of like you have to work twice as hard to have as much. How many of us grew up with that? And yes, those words help to make me successful, but why do I have to? Like, why can't I find an environment where I don't have to work twice as hard to be seen for my efforts, where I can be accepted as is? But I think we all grow up so much at just expecting that struggle that we just stay because we're like, that's just how life is.
Mm-hmm. Yep. Comfortability.
Yeah. Well, I appreciate you both so much for this conversation. We're going to continue.
Wow.
Oh, I don't know what just happened. Oh. We're going to continue chatting, but we want to give everybody who's in attendance a chance to share their stories, their challenges, especially because, we talked about it from the corporate end because I'm all business minded, but I know it applies to relationships, pivoting, whether it's family or spouses, things like that. So we want to continue the conversation, but do you have any final advice or tips, Chantel and Chanel, for anyone who's dealing with either pivoting moments coming at them or making the decision to pivot?
I think you got to follow your heart. Sometimes our mind will lead us in the wrong direction, but if your heart is pure, I think your heart will guide you in the right direction. And sometimes when you get that little inkling that this is not a safe place, or this is a direction I need to go, or this is coming to me, you just got to believe it. We got to start believing it.
Definitely. I believe everything Chantel, and I totally agree. I just think that you have to be okay with change, smile in the face of adversity. When you see things are coming against you or they're not working for you, don't get upset. Say, okay, I understand. I got to do something different. It's time for me to make another change. Time for me to accept the pivot. Let me re-strategize. That's life. When you stop wanting to learn lessons, then life is probably about over for you because that's what we're here for. So if I'm not going through lessons and I'm not taking risks, then I'm really not living. We're going to have trials, we're going to have tribulations and different things. That's the best part of life. If life was the same thing every day, we've seen those movies where people wake up and they do the same thing every day.
Yes.
You would hate it. You would hate it. So that is the best part about it. Get out there, be true to who you are, and be willing and be accepting to change. Don't try to go against the tide.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you both so much for joining us this evening. Thank you everyone in attendance. Those of you watching at home, I hope that you have enjoyed this. We are together the last Thursday of each month at 6:30, and we talk about different topics, and you're always welcome to join us. You can reach out to us at NAMI de.org. You can email me directly at engage@namide.org. And thank you, and you have a great day.
All right.
Thank you.